Good morning, everybody. My name is Aron. I'm the Regional Business Banking Executive for Melbourne Southeast in NAB's Business Bank, and I welcome you this morning to our Cybersecurity Awareness webinar. Before we commence, I'd just like to pay respects to the traditional owners of the land which I join you from today. I'm here in Mulgrave. That's the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Today's an important session for a number of reasons, but first and foremost, we all know that cybersecurity scams and broader privacy issues are front of mind for all businesses in Australia, and that's absolutely the case for us here at NAB as well. We know that significant cyber events can place significant stress on you, your businesses, your clients and your staff members. And part of today is really trying to share some of the insights that we have here at NAB to make sure that you're as safe as you can be to manage these risks in the fullest way possible, as they will inevitably continue to emerge. We're really fortunate today to have Laura Hartley with us today. So Laura is our Head of Group Security, Culture and Advisory at NAB. I've worked with Laura for a number of years, and she's a fantastic presenter and very skilled in this space. She's a criminologist who obviously specialises in cybersecurity. She's been working in our group security team now for 11 years and previously worked in our personal institutional banking teams. She's got a Master's of Criminology from Melbourne University and started back at back in 2013. So congrats on the 10 years recently, Laura. She leads our cyber culture and awareness team, and effectively they're working with people like yourselves on a day-to-day basis to uplift capability, awareness around these risks, so you can be as confident, comfortable around how your business manages this evolving space. I think it's just important to note that whilst this is a webinar today, we are keen to get any questions or queries that you have, and Laura can address those in real time or at the end of the session. There is a Q&A tab in your Zoom screen, which I would encourage you to use. Please put anything or any comments or questions in there and we will get to those. Any that we don't have the time to get to today, we'll follow up at the conclusion of today's session. But finally, as I said at the get-go, thank you for joining. Hopefully this is an informative session. We're always interested and welcome your feedback. So please don't be shy in coming forward on that front, and we hope today is an informative session for you all. I'll pass over to you. Thanks, Laura.
Great. Thanks, Aaron. Hi, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us today. I do hope that you find it to be a useful session. Let me go ahead and I'll share my screen now. And as Aaron said, this is a webinar, so you can see and hear us. We can't see or hear you, just so you know you're off the hook. But if you do want to put a question in the chat, you can use the Q&A and we'll be happy to answer them. I'll try and keep an eye on it throughout. Otherwise, we can answer them at the end. That's absolutely no problem. And yeah, if you have any trouble seeing or hearing us, you can pop a question in there and we'll try and keep an eye on it as well. Okay, great. So let's get started. So as Aaron said, I work in NAB's group security team. And as you'd expect for a large bank, NAB has a large and mature cybersecurity function. I work with hundreds of people who are dedicated to protecting the bank and our customers from cyber attack and cyber crime. You might be relieved to know I'm not one of those highly technical people. My job is to work with them, but more importantly for you to take what we know about what's happening in the cyber threat landscape and then share that information with you, our customers in the community, and then share information on what can you actually do to protect yourself from the threats that we're talking about. So that's really the angle that we're going to take today. I hope you find it up-to-date, practical, and that there's something useful for you to go home and do at work and in your personal lives as well. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We'll start by looking at what are we seeing in the cybercrime environment? What are the top threats that we're seeing? What can you do to protect yourself, like I said? And then where can you go to report if something isn't right or if you need more information? So that's very much the flow of today. And I always like to start with some stats. So here are some current ones, and this is the one that I always look at. So the Australian government has their Report Cyber portal for reporting cyber incidents, and they release this number every year, how often someone's made a report. At present, it stands at every 6 minutes, but that's come down from 11 in previous years. So we've seen that come down from 11 to 9 to 8 to 7 and now to 6. So the number of reports is increasing every year. I think it was up 14% again in the year just gone by. And if we look at this number as well, loss to medium business is also up 10% again to $100,000. So that's what we're seeing happen in the ecosystem. And the reason that we're here today is because we do see that still 75% of breaches involve a human element. And that's because criminals know that businesses of all sizes have worked to better protect themselves online. So we don't see criminals get in these days by hacking into the mainframe. That doesn't really happen. Why would they do that when instead they can send out a phishing email or make a phone call and socially engineer someone into handing over their details? That's a far more efficient way for criminals to go about their business, and probably easier as well. So that kind of hacking the human or social engineering is what we see happen now. And it's why we're here. Some people say that your employees are the weakest link. I don't like to think like that. It's my job to help you empower them to protect your business. So that's very much my focus for today's session. I've got a couple of case studies to share with you. So the first one is the Optus data breach. That this happened in September 2022, you might remember. Let me tell you a little bit about it. So the Optus data breach, it was one of the largest data breaches Australia has ever seen, and it included records for 10 million Australians. As you can see, the Minister, Claire O'Neill, said it was like leaving the window open. And originally, Optus were keen to paint it as a highly sophisticated cyber attack. And everyone thought, oh, yeah, large company, that sounds right. It must have been sophisticated. But as more information came out, it became obvious that wasn't quite the case. And what happened was this breach gave attackers access to names, email addresses, postcodes, postal addresses, phone numbers, dates of birth, and for some people, ID documents, including passports, driver's license numbers, and Medicare cards as well. And as I said, there were 10 million Australians impacted, and about a third of them, 3 million people, had at least 100 points of ID stolen. If you've ever gone to open a bank account or apply for a credit card, get a driver's license, you'll know that 100 points of ID is really critical to doing those things, and not something that you would want someone else to have on you, unfortunately. So interestingly, the data in the Optus breach went back several years. There were people saying, I haven't been an Optus customer for 12 years. Why is my data in this data breach? And the actor demanded a ransom of $1 million. How did it happen? Well, once we kind of got through the initial shock of the breach, the kind of understanding on how it happens normally comes about. And in this case, they found it was a publicly exposed API. And what that means was Optus had accidentally left a portal on the internet open for anyone to find. Normally, that wouldn't be a problem because it would require username and password credentials to get in. Unfortunately, they'd forgotten that step and it was completely open. So anyone who found it could get straight into Optus's network. And there are teams of hackers, good and bad, that scan the internet looking for these things as an easy way to get into organizations. So someone's found this, and unfortunately, rather than reporting it as a security researcher might do, they've decided to exploit it as a criminal. So yeah, it meant anyone who found it could get in. And so this breach, they painted it originally as highly sophisticated, but we later found that wasn't the case. If that one seems too technical, talking about APIs, here's the second option. This was the Medibank breach that happened a month later in October 2022. So it was a very busy time in the cybersecurity industry. This was another 10 million records exposed. This time was first names, surnames, addresses, dates of birth, Medicare numbers, policy numbers, phone numbers, and claims data. Again, they demanded a ransom. And this one had information on children. It had deeply personal healthcare records, information about health, medical procedures people had undertaken, and all of that was exposed online. And some of them, there was extortion as well to say, I'm going to expose this unless you pay me money. This one was caused by a simple phishing email, which is really common. And even more classic, it was a third-party IT contractor. So Medibank had employed a third-party IT contractor. they received a phishing email, put in their username and password, and that let the criminals straight into Medibank's network. So third-party risk is certainly something that we spend a lot of time looking at NAB, and I'm sure your business is thinking about as well. So that's how that breach happened. And when we look at those two, really, I think what we can take away from it, sure, these are really large organizations, but again, it was that human element that let them down. And technology is great, but it's humans that configure it. So we have to pay attention to the basics and make sure our people are helping us keep our organizations secure. So who are the cyber criminals behind these things? Well, if you look in the media, you'd think it was like this picture here on the left, you know, a teenager in mum's basement, wearing the hoodie, they've got the laptop, they've got no face. And for the Optus breach, that is what we saw. And very quickly, the attacker realized they were out of their depth. They hadn't realized they'd taken on such a big fish, and they didn't realize what they had found until it was public. But what we find is that criminals actually normally look more like this. They run like a normal business, they hire office space, they're probably working from home at the moment. They have a graduate program. They often hire graphic designers as well to write the phishing emails and messages for them now. And they have bonus targets like a lot of organizations. And the reason they run in this organized manner is because it makes financial sense for them to do so. So this is the sophistication that we face into every day as a large organization, and so do you. So I think that's just useful to know this is actually the sophistication that we're up against every day. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A. So I thought what we could do now is have a look at some of the NAB branded messages that we see. Obviously, being a large bank, criminals do try and impersonate NAB all the time. Here is a classic NAB branded phishing message. So let's have a look at it together. You can see it says it's come from NAB services, but the email address is nationalaustraliab@croxpay.com. So until a couple of years ago, criminals could make emails look like they came from @nab.com.au, but we were able to turn on a new security control. That means that no one can send an email that says it comes from @nab.com.au unless we allow it. And obviously, we're not going to allow criminals to send emails on our behalf to customers. So we've been able to lock down the use of our email address so that other people can't use it. Obviously, there's caveats to that, but 99% of the time, that's what it means. It means now we don't see much NAB branded phishing like this because they have to send it from these small fry pretend email addresses like this, which aren't very convincing. So that's great news for everybody, except the fraudsters. But otherwise, we find the branding is good. They're still reasonably well written. Of course, it's not a NAB email address. There's no greeting there at all. It's requesting personal information. So this one wants you to complete an online verification process before you can be allowed to access your online bank account. It's always urgent, and they want you to click on a link. And there's no NAB sign off either. No contact details if you need a hand. Nicely, they have included our actual security disclaimer down the bottom and the link to our security site. So that's quite generous of them there. A lot of people, if they weren't sure about this, they would go ahead and click on the link to see if it was legitimate. But in doing so, you could infect your computer with malicious software just by clicking. So we don't want to encourage that. What you can do instead is hover over the link with your mouse and have a look at where it takes you. In this case, if you hover without clicking, you could see it goes to tiny.ie, which we know isn't NAB's website, and now we know not to go any further. So if you get a phishing message like this, or just a message you're not sure about, hover over the link with your mouse without clicking, and you can see where it goes. This also works on your phone. For iPhone, you hold your finger down on the link and it will pop up and show you where it's going to take you. I recommend practicing that on some known legitimate links before you try it on a phishing one. And if I did click on that, say I didn't realize it was phishing, this is where it would bring me. So you might be aware this is a pretend NAB phishing, so a real NAB phishing site that's pretending to copy NAB Connect. You'll notice the background's the same, everything else looks the same. And of course, they want to make it look as close to the real one as possible. If you look at the URL here, though, it's ic-nabb.com.au. That is obviously not NAB, but a lot of people won't realize that and will happily put in their username and password, which goes straight to the fraudsters. So our advice is don't access important websites, including NABs, by clicking on links. Just type nab.com.au straight into your browser. But do keep an eye on the address bar so you'll be able to spot if you're not where you expected to be. For example, if you ended up here, you could look at the address bar and realize, no, that's not the right site. I want to get out of here. One thing we do see more of is SMS phishing. So here's a classic SMS phishing campaign impersonating NAB. And until recently, again, criminals could send a message like this one at the bottom, which isn't from NAB at all, but they've managed to put it on a legitimate conversation, and the sender name is NAB. So people would say to us, you know, I've received this message, either I thought it was legitimate because it came from NAB, or I'm worried NAB's been hacked. And thankfully, none of those things are accurate. So it's an example of the time we have to admire what criminals can come up with. And in this case, criminals realized they could use online portals to send bulk SMS where you can set the sender name to whatever you want. And until recently, there was no control to say who was allowed to send a message, that looked like it came from NAB like this. And your phone doesn't know what NAB means. It just sees it as a string of letters like ANZ, ATO, NBN. Your phone doesn't know what that is. But thankfully, we were able to work with the telcos and ACMA, which is the Communications Authority, the regulator, to lock down the use of this sender name. So only NAB is allowed to use it. And again, what that means is now if you get a text message from NAB, like these top 3 that are legitimate, you can be 99% sure that it definitely came from us. Of course, there are caveats. It requires the telcos to play along and block messages that shouldn't be sent from this sender name. But again, that's been able to give people a lot of comfort. If you get a message from NAB, it will be from us. Another thing that NAB has done is taken links out of our messages, text messages to customers. So in 95% of cases, if you receive a legitimate text message from NAB now, it won't have a link in it. It might tell you to go and do something in internet banking like this message here, but it won't actually have a link to click on, which again is just a way that we're trying to make it more obvious what is from NAB and what isn't legitimately from NAB at all. If I clicked on that though, this is where it would bring me. This is a classic NAB branded phishing site. So you'll see this one, is nab.com.au, but .clientsecured.something. And this is actually the website that we're on here, client-secured, and they've just managed to put this nab.com.au at the start, but that's not actually the website we're on. I know that's confusing, but if I put in my NAB ID, my password, my full name, date of birth, address, city, state, postcode, mobile number, driver's license, I'm sure there's more. Again, I've given criminals a full 100 points of my ID. To cap it off, they would like a photo of the front and back of your driver's license and a selfie of you holding your Medicare card or your passport. They're not fussy. So once again, you can see if I accidentally give this information out or it's exposed in a data breach, criminals can do a lot with that. And it's actually very difficult for you to try and recover that information. Until the Optus and the Medicare breaches happened, you couldn't change your driver's license number in most states in Australia unless you could prove it had been used for fraudulent purposes. That's now changed, which is great, but protecting this information from getting out there in the first place is still really important. So let's move on now and look at some of the things that criminals will try to do to business customers, such as yourselves. One of the really classic things that we see, and NAB receives these as well as a business, is business email compromise. Here is a classic email pretending to come from someone you know, and this might be from real Dropbox or it might be pretending, and it will have a link like this one to download files. Either that will take you straight to a phishing site asking for your username and password, or it might contain malicious software, which will then download to your computer. Neither of those are great outcomes. In this case, this one leads to a phishing site, which wants you to log in through Outlook to access a document. A lot of people would happily click on this and provide their username and password. And the reason why is we find people are distracted. They're on the phone, they want to access something quickly, they are on a deadline, they're not really thinking about it. They see this come in and want to deal with it and move on. So they'll happily click on this, provide the username and password, not realizing they've provided them straight to a criminal. So at the end of the session today, I have a top 5 to-do list for you that we'll send to you after the session. So don't worry about that, about taking notes. But if you were to do one thing after you leave here today, I would recommend that you go back to work and check whether you have multi-factor authentication turned on. That means even if someone has your username and password, maybe you accidentally put them into this phishing site, maybe they've been exposed in a data breach, someone can't get access to your business account, your email, unless they also had the extra piece of information that it requires. So that could be a PIN at the ATM in addition to your card. It could be a biometric, a voice print, face print, thumbprint, or it could be an SMS code sent to your phone, an authenticator app, any of those. So multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication, it's called as well, MFA, 2FA, they all mean the same thing, but it's a really simple but effective way to make sure someone can't get into your account even if they have your password. For Office 365, which I'm guessing a lot of you will be using, it wasn't turned on by default for a long time and there was a cost. So we find businesses now that still don't have it turned on. And it comes down to a risk decision. If you're sitting in your office, sure, you don't need MFA, that's fine. But if I'm accessing my business email by just typing office.com into the browser and on any phone, if I can get straight in with just username and password, that might be a concern. And that's a scenario where turning on multi-factor could keep someone out of your emails that you don't want in there. So something to think about. Let's pretend I am in your business emails. What could I do with that information? I could then send these emails out to other people. That would be easy and continue my run. Or I could send a really nice CEO phishing email like this one. So we got a new CEO last month, Andrew Irvine, and within a couple of days, we started seeing new CEO phishing emails like this one, pretending to come from Andrew to our NAB employees. You might notice this one comes from a Gmail account, so that's pretty easy for us to spot. That's no problem. But a lot of them don't come from a Gmail. If my email account's been compromised, a criminal will send it from Andrew's real email account. So then when they email me, it will be on top of our legitimate conversation. I'm sure you can appreciate that makes it much harder to spot than if it's from a random Gmail account and just sent out of the blue. In any case, these are often successful because people get an email from the CEO and they think, wow, I better do what they've asked me to. So they're going to go ahead and act. We notice now often they'll ask people to provide their WhatsApp number and they'll move off email onto WhatsApp, where it's much harder for the security team to detect that something is happening. Often they'll say that they want you to buy gift cards for them to reward employees. They'd like to keep it a surprise. So all those things are quite cute, but unfortunately, I just recently heard of a business where someone new received this and they panicked, and it wasn't until they were standing in Big W buying the gift cards and the person at the register said to them, oh, did you know that we're seeing gift card scams? They realized there might be a problem. So this is something, it might seem silly, but we do see it happen and it's important to talk to your team about it. We saw a lot of this actually during COVID, and it's because COVID removed the ability to spin around in your chair and ask the person behind you if it was legitimate. And that's what criminals are really banking on, that you'll just go ahead and pay. So it's really important with these ones to maintain that independent check. And in your business, depending on the size, that might mean asking the person sitting next to you, could be the finance officer, the CEO, the EA, whatever makes sense for you. But please double check these by texting, calling, or asking in person before you go ahead and action them. We are still seeing a lot of invoice scams as well. And here's a classic example. So this is a legitimate conversation. Josh has bought a house, Barry's the conveyancer, here's the contract of sale, put your money in this trust account, all above board, no issues here, that email's fine. What they don't realize is Barry's email's been compromised, and 10 seconds later, the criminal who's in Barry's email account watching their conversation sends this email, whoops, sorry, sent you the wrong bank account details, can you put the money in here instead? There are very few people, especially if they're excited about a house purchase, that would double check in this scenario because it's come from their legitimate email on top of the chain of the conversation they were having. We see people fall down here all the time. So please be aware of this situation. A lot of people say to me, oh, yeah, that's fine. I email the person back to validate that they're the right bank account details. That actually won't help if their email's been compromised. The fraudster is going to say, yes, please pay the money to that account. People often say to me, Laura, what technology can I buy to stop this from happening? And sure, there are some ones out there on the market, but what we actually recommend is a 30-second phone call. If you pick up the phone and call Barry on the number you've been speaking to him on, or the number listed on his official website, you will know you're speaking to the right person and you can validate that you're paying the correct person. Don't rely on the phone number on the email, if there is one, because if the bank account details have been altered, so will the phone number, because they know we're encouraging people to pick up the phone and call. So an independent check where you know you're speaking to the right person, both for suppliers and in this kind of case, is really beneficial. John, you're asking if there's a recording. Yes, I am recording the session, and we can share that. We also run this webinar monthly. So if there's anyone from your business that has missed it and would like to attend, we will send out after the session a link to our monthly recorded webinar, and they can jump on there and join next time as well. Great. And I have a couple of examples for you of invoice scams happening. So here is one. This was a property one. A couple lost $285,000. They sent the money to someone's email was compromised, theirs or the conveyances. They sent the deposit to the wrong person or to complete settlement, and they lost $285,000. And then, of course, in these property ones, the question is, well, can settlement still go forward? And thankfully, they managed to borrow money from family to make up the difference and go ahead with settlement. But then they have to pay that money back as well. So it can be a really, really stressful time. We are also seeing this, interestingly, at car dealerships. So here was a $40,000 Mercedes where someone's email was compromised, either this lady's or the car dealerships, and they could be a common target to intercept and, whisk away $40,000. So I hope you can see how that 30-second phone call to validate can save everyone a lot of stress and a lot of heartache. Great. Okay. So let's move on. We're also still seeing a lot of ransomware. So this is where criminals send you a virus to your computer that locks or encrypts all your files and demands a ransom for their return. This is the kind of screen you would see when that happens. This one's quite cute. It's only $300, the ransom. These days, it would have an extra couple of zeros on the end of that. And the largest one that we've seen is 50 million. So that was a car dealership in WA. You don't want to have to try and scramble together that kind of cash to buy Bitcoin in a pinch. Of course, being criminals, there's also no guarantee you will get your information back. So we don't want to have to try and pay them at all. What is far more satisfying is to be regularly backing up your data. So if your computers fail for any reason, say it's, ransomware, or maybe there's a fire in your office, or your computers just are old and they stop working, you can bring in your backup, which is safely offsite or in the cloud, and you can keep working. Something that's really important, though, is to test your backups regularly so you know you can rely on them. You would hate to go through this, wipe your computers, be confident you could bring down your backup, and then for it not to work. So part of disaster recovery is testing your backup and knowing that it will work if you ever need to rely on it. So if you're not doing that regularly, certainly something to think about. Best practice is 2 backups, one safe in the cloud with 2-factor turned on, and then a physical backup off-site as well. And here's what your information looks like when your files are encrypted. A lot of people think this encryption can be broken and they can get their information back, but it's so strong that encryption cannot be broken. And either paying the ransom or using a backup, they're the only ways to recover your information, unfortunately. Another thing that we are seeing is a lot of investment scams. This was the #1 thing that people lost money to last year in Australia. We've just had a new report from ScamWatch come out from the ACCC. So investment scams are huge. From memory, it was something like 1.7 billion people lost to them. So please be aware this is happening and be extra vigilant. What they normally look like is an email sent to you, or maybe a phone call from someone pretending to be from NAB or a stockbroking firm with a fantastic opportunity. Often now it's a term deposit, that kind of thing, offering a better rate than what you could get in the market. But they are really sophisticated, and they come with a really nice prospectus like these ones. They'll have a nice picture of NAB's CEO and a blurb from them and a signature and everything. And on the email, they'll often have a phone number to say, you can call NAB if you want to know more. And if you call, the person who answers the phone will say they work for NAB. So they've gone all out on making these seem legitimate. So please be aware. The largest one that I have seen was just recently. A NAB customer was preparing to make a transfer to an investment scam of another bank. In a single transaction, they were going to transfer $57 million. And thankfully, their NAB banker asked the right questions and recognized it was a scam. So please, if you want to take up an investment opportunity, please check with your NAB bankers beforehand they can double check for you whether it is legitimate and save you from losing, even if it's not 57 million, any amount of money is too much to lose to these scams. We are also getting a lot of reports of scam phone calls targeting NAB Connect users especially. So this scenario is the most common at the moment. You might get a phone call from someone saying they're from NAB, saying there's a problem with your accounts, can I help you out? And they'll ask for the last 6 digits of your NAB Connect user ID, which might sound innocuous, but until you realize the first 4 digits are the same. So if you give out the last 6, you've given out the entire number. And that is enough for them to trigger a password reset. They'll then ask you for the code and convince you to sharing it, and they'll get straight into your account like that and start transacting. Obviously, you don't want that to happen. So please, if you get a phone call from someone saying they work for NAB and there's a problem with your accounts, we recommend you hang up, call your banker or call NAB on our official phone number and validate with us if something is wrong, and we'll be able to help you that way. That's really, really, really important. I thought I'd quickly show you some of the phishing emails we receive here at NAB. Your employees might receive these ones as well. So here's employee benefits plan for the year with a nice QR code. So we are seeing these come around, and obviously people got comfortable clicking on QR codes during COVID. So something to watch out for. Here's a classic mailbox is full kind of message pretending to come from Microsoft, and another CEO phishing email pretending to come from our old CEO, Ross McEwen. And this is the kind I was saying, they want to send gifts to people for their hard work and they don't want to ruin the surprise. So can you keep it confidential? So that's all the scary stuff. Let's move on and talk now about how you can use this information to better protect your business. So first of all, I've mentioned these already, but what has NAB done to try and help customers? We've removed links from text messages. We've also been able to lock down our sender name, like I showed you, on email and SMS. And we've also done it for phone numbers. So we were seeing scams where customers would get phone calls that looked like it was coming from NAB's general number, which is 132265. And so they thought it was legitimately NAB calling them. But again, criminals can make that phone number look like they come from anywhere they want. So what we've been able to do is, again, work with the telcos to lock down our phone numbers so that criminals can't impersonate NAB like that. So again, it doesn't work for all phone numbers, but if you get a phone call that says it's from NAB like that, from our general number, you can now be confident that it really would be NAB calling you. So I have for you, we often play this as a little game, but it doesn't work that well on webinar. Here are the top 5 passwords that were exposed in data breaches for 2022. So password 123456, 789, guest, and QWERTY, which is the top line of the keyboard. In short, these are all terrible passwords. Please do not use any of these. These are the first passwords that criminals will try if they want to try and get into your account. So please don't use these. What we recommend instead is to use a password safe. If you don't know what that is, it's a program you download on your computer or your phone, or both. And it remembers all your passwords for you. They're securely locked inside a vault. No one else can access them. They're encrypted. And it can generate secure, unique passwords for you for each account, which is what we want. You just use a main password that you do have to be able to remember to come and go to get them, or you can use Face ID as well. Not having to remember 300 passwords, that's the average number of passwords the average person has. You don't have to remember 300 passwords. That's really liberating. And we know people can't remember that many. So they use about 5 and they cycle through them all across the internet. And what happens is something called credential stuffing. So say your Domino's Pizza online account gets compromised, you think big deal, no problem, I'm not really worried. But what happens is you've used the same password for Domino's as you have for your banking or your LinkedIn account or your superannuation. You don't want criminals to be able to get that list of exposed credentials from Domino's and then try it everywhere across the internet, which they do. That's called credential stuffing. And that's an automated process. They don't have to work very hard because they know people will reuse passwords. You don't want the fact that you use the same password for Domino's as your super fund to mean someone can get in there and drain your account. And this happened recently with websites including the iconic Dan Murphy's and Guzman and Gomez, you might remember. So that's why using unique passwords is so important, especially for important things, to make sure that criminals can't get into your account. So just to recap, we recommend a password safe I can't recommend one in particular, but you can Google top 5 password safes. There's lots of good free ones. I can tell you I personally use LastPass, and that's quite good. A lot of them have also an emergency feature where you can designate an emergency contact. Say you win lotto or get hit by a bus, you can give someone emergency access to your digital estate, and they can get into your accounts and help you manage things, which is good peace of mind as well. So let's talk about what you can do to better protect your business. This is the government's advice. This is the Australian Cybersecurity Centre Essential 8. So these are 8 things that a business of any size can do to better protect themselves. Some of these we've already talked about. We've talked about MFA, we've talked about backups. Everyone knows they should keep the software on their computer up to date. So that's 2 and 6. This is a great list to come back to and say, are we doing these things? If not, why not? And whether you do IT in-house or you outsource it, it's a good list to look at periodically and say, could we move the dial? Could we look to tackle another one of these? So recommend having a look. There's lots more information on the website, and we'll share this with you after the session. Here's NAB advice. It's along the same lines. And if you're using NAB Connect, please make sure you're using our security controls. My favorite is segregation of duties. That means not using, one person can't create and approve a payment of a certain size. You need a second approver. And having that second set of eyes can be a great way to pick up external fraud attempts, mistakes, but also internal fraud attempts, which do definitely happen, unfortunately. So segregation of duties and multiple authorizers are great security controls to use if you're not already. We have a big security hub on our website with information, guidance. We have security alerts. We have this monthly webinar series that I mentioned, toolkits for businesses. So please, if you haven't had a look, jump on. It's nab.com.au/security. It will come out in the materials we send after the session. So you can have a look there. We'll send this to you, but if you do experience an incident, what should you do? If you think you've been impacted by a fraud or a scam, please let us know as fast as possible. The faster you tell the bank, the more we can do. And I should mention, with the invoice scam scenario that we looked at and the CEO impersonation, if you think you've been affected by a scam like that, let the bank know as fast as possible, because what we will try and do is recover the money. And what we do is work with the bank where you sent the money to. We get them to freeze the account so we can try and recover it. But I'm sure you can appreciate criminals try and get that money out from where we can access it as fast as possible. So you letting us know as quick as you can is really helpful. If we cannot recover the money, that loss will usually sit with your business. So I find that's important to say up front. And it makes that 30-second validation phone call we talked about seem more palatable. If it could save you $20,000 or $500,000, that's a pretty powerful 30-second phone call. But like I said, if you do get impacted, call us as soon as possible. We'll help you as much as we can. If you receive something pretending to be from NAB, please let us know. You can report it through your banker, or you can send it straight to my team. That's fish@nab.com.au. And we use that to publish the security alerts I mentioned just before on our website. So thanks in advance. And if you think you've been the victim of a cyber attack or a data breach, report it to the government. That's the Australian Cybersecurity Centre. They also have a hotline you can call, and they'll walk you through what to do. And you may need to contact the Information Commissioner as well. But there's other advice on whether that will be required you can look at. So where can you go for more info? Obviously, I've talked about NAB's website. The government's website, cyber.gov.au, is very good. And there's also ScamWatch for information on scams. So recommend having a look at those. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of offers that we have at the moment for small to medium businesses. So these offers are all at nab.com.au/business offers. So with Microsoft, we have a partnership. You can get a free cybersecurity assessment. It's an online assessment, takes a couple of hours, and it provides a report on what you can do to better protect yourself. This is a new program, this middle one we're working on with Microsoft and the Victorian government. Small to medium businesses can get an in-person workshop with NAB and Microsoft to get advice on how you can better protect yourself. And on the right, this is for smaller businesses, but this is NAB's paying for a year of free CrowdStrike cybersecurity software for small business customers. So that one, if you're interested, talk to your banker and they can let you know if you'll be eligible. But they're all at nab.com.au/business offers. This last thing from me, promise. As I said, here's the top 5 to-dos. if you leave here today and you're not sure where to start, what should you do? Go away and have a look at these. So like I said, the ASD Essential 8, the government's advice, have a look at those. Is there something you could add to your list, your repertoire? Turn on multi-factor or check it's configured how you want. Check if you're using our controls like segregation of duties. Back up your data and test they're working, and make sure you have automatic software updates turned on as well. You may as well let them be automatic and let it take care of itself. And talk to your team. What I find is the most powerful thing you can do is share examples of your team when something happens. So a scam call, a phishing email, CEO phishing attempt, share them with the team and talk about what you want the team to do next time they see one. So that kind of ongoing dialogue is a really great way to get people across what you're actually receiving and talk about how they should be handled. So that's it from